All right, I am going to film this little tutorial video. I've never done something like this before, so bear with me. I'm not really planning on doing anything fancy like editing it or anything, so I'm gonna go ahead and jump in and get started so this isn't too long. First, I'm gonna talk about the materials you're gonna need. This is for the bookmaking assignment. So first you're gonna need something kind of thick. You don't want like actual cardboard, like from a cardboard box, but something kind of thick. Like this is just a cereal box, so it's thicker. Cardstock would work. Construction paper would be okay. Anything that's just slightly thicker than just regular like printer paper or notebook paper. So this is a this is a Cinnamon Toast Crunch box. So what I did was I cut this so that it is 10 by 7. You don't have to make yours 10 by 7. I just did that so that when it's folded in half, it's gonna be 5 by 7. So just kind of think about like whatever this length is, once it's folded in half, that's gonna be the size of your book. So I cut this first because it's thicker. Anyway, so let's go ahead and just talk about the materials first. So that's what you need for your cover, something a little bit thicker. Then you need pages. So I think on the assignment, it says anywhere from 5 to 8 pages, because the pages are the same. They'll be folded in half, and those pages are what, once they're in half. So if I had 5, that means that I'll end up with a 10-page book. So any kind of paper will work. You'll see I just picked scrap stuff. Like this is from a word search book. I have a couple sheets of like printer white paper. This I tore out of my planner. It really doesn't matter, because even the stuff that has things on it, it would be fun like if I went on top of it with another color and a marker or something bold, or I could even collage on these types of paper. So anything you have laying around is fine. If you have a bunch of white paper and you want to do that, that's fine. Notebook paper works. Any kind of paper that you have that's kind of a standard thickness. You want the cover to be the thickest thing you have. You're gonna need some scissors, any kind of scissors. You're gonna need something sharp to poke holes with, and you'll see this in the tutorial. But like this is just a really small, I don't know, hold on, I'm trying to see. This is just a really small finishing nail. You could use that with a hammer to poke your holes. A safety pin would work in a pinch. I wouldn't recommend it. It's not the easiest thing, but if you needed to use this, you could. The best and easiest thing is probably a push pin like this. Sorry, I'm really bad at this. Something like this is good if you have something like that. This is another type of push pin. It's got like more of a flat head on it, and it would work too. This type is better because there's more to grip onto when you're poking your holes, but a flat one would work. So anything sharp that you have, you kind of just have to be resourceful, find something that works at your house. Anything like this is good for poking the holes that we're gonna need to poke. You're also gonna need some type of thread. What would also work, probably even better, but I actually just ran out yesterday, would be dental floss. I have just some standard sewing thread that I'm gonna use. You can use any color you'd like if you have a variety, or just whatever you have laying around. A needle, the bigger the needle, the better. This is actually a pretty small needle, but it's all that I had, so that's what I'm gonna use. And you could even get away with doing this without a needle. The needle definitely makes it easier, but you don't have to have it to make this work. And then the last thing that you're gonna need, and I'm working on a like a cutting mat right here. So the cutting mat, something like that, if you happen to have it, if you craft at home or whatever, that's good. If you don't have something like a cutting mat, you want something kind of thick, like this is an old sketchbook, something sort of thick like this, or a magazine. Anything that you could put under it while you're poking the hole, so you're not gonna make marks on the surface. Like I don't wanna make marks on my table, so I'm making sure I have the cutting mat underneath, but a magazine or a sketchbook or something, or like a notepad, whatever you can put underneath it would work just fine too. Okay, so that's all the materials you're gonna need to do this. It's stuff that you should be able to scavenge around your house and find. So I'll go ahead and get straight into actually making this. So I've already pre-cut my cover just to kind of save a little bit of time. Now this is gonna be the inside of my cover, because remember that one of the guidelines for the project is that you need to decorate your cover with something. So I am making sure that this brown side is gonna be on my outside, and this will just be on the inside where my pages are. It doesn't really matter. You need your paper, because this is so thick, that the reason that I cut this first to the size that I want my book to be is because then you can just trace it onto these pages that you need to make that same size without having to measure all your pages. You can just measure once and make this the size that you want it, and then lay it on top. Make sure it's kind of even with all the edges, and then I'm just gonna trace it onto these so that all my paper is gonna be the same size as my cover, and they'll kind of fit neatly inside whenever I get ready to bind the book together, So I'm cutting more than one piece of paper at once to save time. There's no reason that you should cut papers individually if you don't have to. At school, we have the luxury of having a paper cutter, but we don't have that here, and you probably don't have it at home. If you did, you could use that, that's fine. I'm gonna cut these so that they don't have to be like perfectly perfect. They just need to all be roughly the same. So these are my other papers that I already pre-cut, and you can see when I stack them together, they're all pretty even. So get rid of my trash. So I've got my pages. I'm doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and my cover. All right, so the next thing that we need to do is we need to make a guide of where we're gonna poke the holes in our paper. So what I'm gonna do is take all of my sheets that I've got, make sure that they're kind of stacked neatly and even, and then I'm gonna fold them in half. Now, you could measure the middle and try to fold on that line if you want, or if you just wanna really carefully try to line up the, let's see, it's hard for me to see. If you wanna line up like the corners and just, you know, press and crease it to make that works fine too. So now this is what the size of our book will be like. And this is the center. So what I'm gonna do is do mine in two sets. So I'm not trying to push through all of these papers at the same time. So I'm just gonna kind of take 2 and 3. I'll set those to the side for now. And then on this one, I'm gonna try, while I'm doing this whole process, I'm gonna make sure that these stay really lined up neatly on the edges. If you have binder clips or paper clips, you could clip those on the edges. I'm not gonna do that for the demonstration, just for the sake of being able to show you that it's possible to do this without that, but that does make it easier if you wanna use that. So I'm gonna find where I think is pretty much the middle. Again, you could measure this if you want to, but for this type of book binding, it's not totally necessary that it's completely measured perfectly. So I'm gonna find on this crease that I folded, I'm gonna find where it's about the middle, and I'm gonna make a dot there. And then I'm gonna take like about 1 finger width from the edge of the paper at the top, and I'm gonna make another dot here. And then I'm gonna do the same thing from the bottom in here. And all these dots, 1, 2, 3, should be on this crease that I folded in the middle of these papers. Now you have to have 3. You don't wanna do more than 3. In this type of stitch, you can do it with more than 3, but for this demonstration and for the purposes of you trying to do this at home by yourself, I really think just stick with the 3. So you have to have 3 dots. They have to be spread apart like this. And you don't want them to be too close to the edges. That's why I said 1 finger width from the top and from the bottom. Okay, so what I'm gonna go ahead and do now is punch my holes through the paper, and there's these 3 underneath it. I'm gonna use the push pin, but remember we talked about you could use the flatter push pin. You could even use a hammer and a small nail if that's all you have at home, or in a pinch, you could use a safety pin. The safety pin is gonna be really difficult. That is not what I would recommend, but if that's all you have, you can make that work. Okay, so I'm gonna take this, and on all 3 of the holes that I made in the center, and this is when you would wanna put, if you don't have a cutting mat like I have underneath my paper, you'd wanna put a magazine or something thick underneath it so that you could punch these holes without making marks on the table that you're working on. So I'm gonna take the push pin, and I'm gonna push it on the dot that I made, making sure that it comes through to the other side. There it is. I'm gonna do the same on the other 2 that are closer to the edges. All All right, good. So I'm gonna actually push these in and kind of wiggle the push pin around a little bit just to make sure that the holes, you don't want giant holes, like you wouldn't want to use a hole puncher to do these, but you want them to have some wiggle room so that it's easy to sew through when you get to that step. So I'm just gonna kind of make those a little bit thicker. So now I'm gonna use this little section as a guide. Now that I've made these and measured these holes, or not measured, but placed these holes, we wanna make sure that all the other holes on our cover and on the rest of our paper are in the exact same spot so they line up when we go to sew it. So now that I've made this one, I'm gonna use it to make the marks on my paper. So I'm gonna lay it here so that they're even with each other, but I can see. So this is the first sheet that I did, but I have it folded, and then this is the remaining 2 sheets that I need to punch holes in, they're open. So when it's folded, and it may be hard to see when you're filming, but you can see the little punctures through the back side. So when I line it up to the paper, in the center where the crease is, I'm gonna make dots that line up to the same spot. So where that puncture is, I'm gonna make a little dot on that middle piece. Where that puncture is, make a dot here, and where this one is, make a dot here. So now I've got the same guides. Again, I'm gonna use the push pin, go through these holes. Try to, as you're working, if you don't have these binder clips together, make sure that you're trying to keep your pages pretty straight with each other. I'm gonna poke a hole here. The hammer and nail is not hard to use at all either. It's just way louder, and I didn't want to make the video super obnoxious. Plus, I have a feeling if I was hammering with in here, my dog would start barking, and I don't want you guys to have to hear her barking. So again, these are the same 3 holes. I used my first as a guide so that when these are stacked inside of each other like this, they should all line up together with the cover. All right, last but not least, I need to do the cover. So I'm gonna go ahead, I haven't done this yet, but I'm gonna take the cover and I'm gonna fold it in half, making sure that I line up the corners so it's pretty even, and then crease. Now this is obviously thicker because it's that really thin cardboard from a cereal box, so it's gonna be just a little bit harder to use the push pin to go through this. So I'm gonna open it back up. And same steps that I did before when I used the puncture holes to make the marks for my new holes. I'm gonna line it up. And I'm gonna use my pen to make guide marks where I need to punch. As long as you can see it, doesn't matter how big they are, you know where, it just as a guide for yourself. Set that to the side. And then use my push pin to poke these. So I'm kind of lifting this up a little bit and like making sure that my hand isn't underneath the part where I'm pushing and pushing through, because this is thicker. I wouldn't say, don't do anything thicker than a cereal box or some kind of package like that. Don't use like an Amazon box. That would be way, way, way too thick for this. But like I said before, you could also use cardstock or construction paper. And I'm just kind of wiggling the push pin around to make sure that hole's big enough for us to get through pretty easily once we start the next step. You could even, I'm not gonna go back and do this to everything, but you could use like a nail or something that's a little bit thicker to punch through and kind of widen all the holes in your paper and in your cover if you felt like they weren't big enough. Okay, so now that I've put the dots in my pages, and when you have pages like this in bookmaking, make sure that they're stacked inside of each other like this, that they all have the holes, that they're pretty neat together. And when they're folded like this, that's actually called a signature in a book. So we're making a book that only has 1 signature, but you know, you could make a book with 20 signatures if you had the time and the means and wanted to do that. So I'm making sure that my signatures are stacked inside of each other. They all have the same holes. And then when we make the book, it will go inside the cardboard like this. We're gonna sew the edges, it's the next step. All right, so what we need now, I'm gonna set this to the side. We're gonna use our needle and thread. I think this is brand new thread, so I don't have an edge yet. It's probably really annoying to watch. There it is. Okay. What you really need, you don't need a whole lot of thread. I'm gonna get, kind of think about the height of my book, and I'm gonna get like 4 times the amount of the height of the book. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I'm gonna snip it. Now you guys know threading a needle is not super easy, so please bear with me. It might take me a sec to get it through this little eye. I'm so sorry you guys have to watch a video of me doing this. This is not, I don't even want to watch a video of myself. I did it. That didn't take too long. All right, so just like when you're sewing, if you've sewn before, maybe you haven't, but if you have sewn before, we're gonna pull it through and we're going to double it just so it's a little bit stronger. Now, in a lot of bookmaking, you don't have to do it this way, but just for this very simple example, I am gonna have us do it this way. If you're in another upper level class in the future, you may not do it this way, but just for this project, this little mini project, this is what we're gonna do. So I got the 2 ends of the thread. It's gone through the needle, and I've got the 2 ends here, and I'm gonna just tie them together. You don't need to worry about this knot too much. It's just so that the thread doesn't come off the needle. We're not using this knot to like stop it from going through the paper. We're just using this so that the thread and needle will stay in place. So I'm just knotting it once like that. And now we're gonna start the pamphlet stitch. So I've got all my papers. Excuse me. I've got all my papers. They all have holes poked. My cover has the holes poked in the same spot. And now I'm gonna actually start sewing the pamphlet stitch. So clean up my workspace a little bit. All right. So when you do the pamphlet stitch, you wanna make sure that you're starting from the inside of your book. So I'm starting, this is the inside, because when it's folded like this, that's what I want my cover to be. So I'm starting on the inside, and we're starting in the middle hole first. So I'm gonna go ahead, and it may be a little bit, the first times that you go through each hole, you may kind of have to like maneuver it a little bit to get through the holes that you poked. So I'm through the paper, and now I'm gonna use the same, go through the middle hole on the book. So I'm coming out on the back side. I'm gonna pull the thread through, but leave about this much, about 2 to 3 inches sticking out on the inside that we don't want to pull through to the other side. So I am going to leave that in, and then I'm going to come with my needle and I'm going to go to the bottom. So this is the middle, and then I'm going to go in the bottom hole here. And again, this is gonna, because it's the first time we're going through this hole, it's going to take a little bit of maneuvering to get through the cover and then to get through the pages as well. But again, if you poke those holes and you use the reference, it shouldn't be too difficult. All right, so I'm gonna make sure this is pulled tight. There's no slack back here. And you can tighten it up as you go, but there we go. Then I need to use the needle. You see? Okay, I'm gonna use the needle and I'm gonna go back through the middle hole again. So I went from middle to bottom. Now I'm gonna go back through middle. And it should be easier this time because you've already done it once. I'm gonna pull that tight. So now my needle is on the outside of the book. Excuse me. I don't have the Rona, just a little bit of allergies. Okay, so now this is still pulled tight. We saw that it was pulled tight on the inside. Now I'm gonna go through the top hole. So I went through the middle to the bottom, and then on the inside went back through the middle, and now I'm going in through the top. Again, it's the first time on this hole, so it's gonna take a second to get through. Now I'm gonna make sure it's pulled tight. I don't wanna pull too hard because I don't wanna tear the paper, but I'm just pulling straight and making sure that on the back it's together. And the last step, super easy. Now that I've got, it should look like this on the inside when you get to the last step. So this is connected. You've got a tail here, and this is coming out from the top. And the back side should look like this. kind of like a completed straight line because it's coming in and out here and in and out here. So when I'm finished, I'm going to tie these off together. This is not, I'm making this look like way harder than it is. I would leave the needle on for this because it does help. Make sure it's not, I'm gonna just double it. Probably don't need to, but I'm gonna just do it one more time because it was so difficult the first time. I wanna struggle through it again. Knot it. Then we can, because this has been knotted, we can cut the excess off. You can cut it pretty short like that. So this still has my needle attached to it, don't lose that. Even this is just such a small amount of thread, I'm gonna throw it away. But there's my needle. And we made the book, that's it. So it's stitched on the outside with the green, can you see? My cover is the plainish cardboard, and if you have something that's not totally plain, that's okay. It can have a little bit on it, but remember that part of the instructions is that you do need to decorate this cover for the assignment. And then I have my pages on the inside, so when I open it, I've got my cover that you can see on the inside, and you can flip through, and this can be used. So that's it. You know, rewatch those steps if you're having trouble with the order of the stitching and all that stuff, but just remember the most important things is that your holes are all punched in the correct spots on the cover and on the papers, and that everything is folded in half and you know, kind of stacked inside of each other so that when it's folded in half it makes these pages. So that's it for bookmaking. If you have questions, send me an email or send me a message on Canvas, but that's it. Bye.